Hello, I'm talking with Peter today, Peter Wakefield, who is talking in his capacity as esoteric philosopher, and this pod comes under the heading of metaphysics and esoteric philosophy in general, and the subject is the secret success of Leicester City Football Club and its relevance to archetypes. Over to Peter.
Thank you, Lynn, and welcome everybody. Yes, the secret of Leicester City's success. This week, of course, has seen the rise of Leicester City with the taking of the Premiership title, which is a fantastic achievement, of course. It's been said many times this week already, but I thought we'd do a short pod on the whys and wherefores of how they've come to achieve such glory, really.
Meteoric rise, isn't it, really?
Yes, there are many ingredients for success, of course. The natural ingredients of a sporting team, of any sport, would be things like you hear every day: confidence, team spirit, working together, application, personal discipline, that type of thing. Those are all formal and normal ingredients of a successful ethic, but often overlooked are the abstract or the subjective or even the esoteric factors which go towards the synthesis of a whole unit which makes it successful, whether it's a sporting team or a business or a group of people.
Well, it's the esoteric factors we're interested in here, isn't it, really?
Okay, well, obviously Leicester have won the title because they got the right results and they put in the right effort, which incidentally is one of the Buddhistic, it's one of the Buddhistic tenets on the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, putting the right effort in. Nobody can question that they've done that, but the Buddhist factor is the interesting factor here, because the club is owned by Thai owners. In Thailand.
Right.
And they have Buddhistic tendencies or leanings, I have heard, although I don't know too much about them. But what I have heard is very positive, and that they have built their ownership of the club around tenets of Buddhism.
Buddhistic wisdom.
Which, of course, upholds goodness. It's nothing to do with religion, because Buddhism is a philosophy.
Buddhism isn't a religion.
It's a way of life. It's a philosophy. And what's interesting here is the esoteric factors involved. Now, in the third postulate of ancient wisdom, it is said that any unit of people, whether they're a singular individual or a unit of people brought together like in a team, live in the body of something greater than itself. So a team like Leicester would live within the club, which is the bigger unit. So you've got a team or a squad which is part of a bigger unit, which is the club. Now, if the club is built on strong principles, it will follow that the team will use those or come under the umbrage of those strong principles also. So the point I'm making here is if you have it right from the top, run on strong principles, it follows down, because the son always lives within the father. And by that I mean the smaller unit of the team lives within the father of the club, which is the higher unit, the bigger unit. So, what we have here, I have heard, is prayers and talismans being said and given out amongst the crowd on match days, which really provides or creates a climate of thinking. It acclimatizes the crowd and the supporters to use a different slant of thinking, which are positive and
almost
spiritual.
Law of attraction, really.
It's the law of attraction. And what's interesting in here is there are spiritual values rather than corporate leadership values, which has set Leicester City apart this season. It's very interesting. And what's interesting here also is the template to which the team has been built. people have talked of Nigel Pearson doing a lot of the groundwork, which was the previous manager in the previous season. And the template was perhaps started by him, but has been strengthened by Ranieri and the owners. And the template is very important because what's interesting about Leicester City this season is they've used the same players often, who have integrated better together because they have played together more, whereas these richer clubs with bigger squads have found it difficult and will always find it difficult to integrate their templates and making them stronger because they're using far more players where the energies are disparate.
But what about the esoteric side of this? What do you mean by templates, and where does it come into the esoteric wisdom?
Well, you take something like a climate of thought, the climate of thinking. It's an abstract concept, but the abstract cloud of thinking, which the players are brought up with the philosophy of the manager and the coaches and the owners and the club itself, the ethos of the club, goes towards strengthening a template which the players play within. This is very important. Bill Shankly did it at Liverpool, where he built up a philosophy whereby the whole generation of football players coming to Liverpool Football Club would come under the ethos of Shankly, and Manchester United under Matt Busby, of course. It's very important. These templates are very important because it makes it easier for successive teams to follow. So, for example, if Liverpool were winning the FA Cup and the European Cup many times over, it would make it easier for successive Liverpool teams. But the point I'm making here is templates are important whether you're in business, whether you're an individual, or as part of a team. So, the interesting factor also is that Leicester City have not been extravagant. They haven't overspent, being extravagant in spending or in wages, which the point I'm making here is there's been no wastefulness. So it's about ethics, it's about metaphysical ethics.
A while ago, you made the analogy to me of a fountain.
Yeah, a fountain is a shape which retains its form and image, but the elements that make up that form and image are ever changing. The droplets of water are ever dynamic, in motion, but they retain the image of the fountain. Football clubs or teams are the same. And with Leicester City, they have retained this image, and the dynamism that has made up this image has maintained itself over the course of a whole season. So the right results have come because they have been run on the right principles. So Leicester City have exemplified the principle of this season building their house in the name of goodness under their Buddhist owners, whereas a lot of clubs build their house in vain because they don't build it under a good ethos. So that's their metaphysical message.
I mean, it's true, for instance, that Manchester United pray, or used to, particularly people like Busby, under a very Catholic sort of regime, and pray and what have you, and are successful. So any kind of focused mentality could bring the same result.
Of course.
But what we're saying is that this is, and what you're saying is that this is much lighter and it's much more, actually much more free of stress.
Yes. Some clubs get bogged down, become static and frozen because of the negative karma that they've built up through extravagance, the having funds and chicanery, wastefulness of funds, greed, which brings about an imbalance of ethics.
And energy.
And energy. Energy follows thought, remember.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So this is where Leicester City have been successful this season. Football clubs are in the news a lot, but they have to learn to work within the universal law, the law of attraction. And that's what Leicester City have done very successfully this season. So it follows on the pitch.
See, the law of attraction has many arms. I mean, it has other things like the law of gratitude, the law of appreciation, and it's not just about going, I want, let's get.
Exactly.
And we talk about this a lot now, don't we?
Yes.
So what we're saying is, in the Buddhic way, which is do no harm,
That's
practice
right.
harmfulness.
Yes.
Harmlessness, I mean, practice harmlessness, then their ethos is quite set, because they're more self-contained rather than competitive.
Yes, exactly. Well put, Lynn. I couldn't agree more. This principle has to be applied in the business world as well as in the sporting world, because a lot of the bigger, richer clubs and even businesses are entrenched in material success and the machine of ploughing money in and out, but often very wastefully. And the law of economy, which is an esoteric principle, the law of economy has to be fulfilled. If not, if you are wasteful, you have negative karma.
Well, if you waste, you'll want.
Yes,
as my granny used to say.
We do well to remember that, don't we? So we do have to build the house in the right way. So this was often seen in business as well. I'll give you 2 examples, Lynn, of how not using these principles, these esoteric principles, has led to tragedy. You may remember in Manchester in the 2000s, the noughties, the 2002 onwards, I think it was. Do you remember the accident group? TAG?
No.
The accident group.
Were they kind of ambulance tracers?
Yes, they were. The accident group was set up by a chap called Mark Langford, who was a director. And he was very successful. The accident group were like ambulance chasers.
Well, they're still doing that now, of course.
Well, of course it happens, but
he became culture.
He became overwhelmed by the greed and manipulation he showed to his business and staff, and it eventually smothered him. And he died in a car accident in Spain shortly after. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is, in business, if you don't work to high principles, this is what can happen. Yeah. Because he just disregarded his hundreds of staff who he made redundant in a text.
Oh, yes, I remember that. But he's not on his own. I mean, this is the worst of capitalism.
No, he's not on his own. You've got the example of Murdoch as well with the News of the World.
And the pension fund.
The debacle of the News of the World, where Murdoch was embarrassed into closing down that newspaper because they hadn't been run on good principles. No. So you see it all the time, this negative karma of cause and effect in business and in sport. So that would be my message to people. If you're an athlete, you need to live your life off the field in parallel to the disciplines you should show on it. And when where there is an imbalance, Lynn, where you're doing things in your private life that aren't in symmetry with your athletic disciplines, then things are going to go wrong. And many players get injuries and become injury prone because of that lack of symmetry. But this season, Leicester City have lived within that universal principle, and that's why I think they've been very successful.
How long have this time management been in place for Leicester
Only
City?
a few years. I don't know exactly how.
So ever since the onset of the time management, they've gone from strength to strength.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And the proof of the pudding. You have the skeptics who say, well, they might have done that anyway because the time management might just know a lot about football. You get people who will say that.
Yeah.
And actually, there's no arguing against that, really.
No. The esoteric principle here, Lynn, is as within, so without.
Yes, of course.
So as within your club, so it will take shape.
So the inner world reflects the outer world, or the outer world is a reflection of the inner world.
And we all live within the image of something greater than ourselves. Yeah. And because Leicester City players have had that template of goodness at the club, they've lived within the law, and that has brought them success as well as their results. So that concludes this pod, Lynn.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter.
If you want to know if there is anybody out there listening who wants advice, they can go into my LinkedIn page, Peter Wakefield.
Thank you very much, Peter. Join us next time, please, for our next metaphysical pod.